Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Women's Coffee Club. This is, we created this group to have a safe space for women to share and inspire each other so that we could, support each other to move forward with whatever it is that we want to do. And we do this through a collaboration, learning from a different host each week. And this week, we're very lucky to have Amy Okarma to host this meeting, to do the presentation. Her topic is toxic bond and abusive relationship. And I'd like to, let me see, let me let Jody in here for a minute. I'd like to ask Amy to introduce herself, just to tell us a little bit about her background and why she decided to choose this topic. So thank you again, Amy. We're very grateful for you, and we're grateful for all of you. Morning, Jody. We're grateful
Good
for
morning.
all of you to be here. So Amy, take it from here.
Thank you so much, Rennie. I really appreciate you providing this space. It's been really amazing, even though I haven't interacted as much as I've been wanting to recently. I always feel uplifted and, empowered and supported after these meetings. So thank you so much again. And I am on my phone, so I can't see everybody on the screen. So if I'm missing something, just let me know if somebody's raising their hand. My name's Amy Okarma, and within the past year, I enlisted a life coach to help me better myself and better my life after years and years of therapy that I felt really were not, hitting the mark, or I was not advancing in the way that I really wanted to. I always went into a new therapist feeling like, oh, this is going to be the one, and they're going to direct me in the way I need to go to better myself and improve my situation. And it wasn't until I hired a life coach and went through a program that it really helped change my perceptions and gave me more tangible, concrete tools to really use, that I could turn to when I was, in a negative way of thinking or being. So that was almost a year ago or actually a little over a year ago, I believe it was in March. So my life has changed pretty drastically since then. And there's no end game here. We are always growing and improving. So the reason that I chose this topic today, I know that it's not necessarily a positive topic, but I do think it's one that needs to be addressed. I myself personally was raised in a narcissistically abusive type household. At the very least, I can call it dysfunctional. I'm the only girl with three brothers. And typically I was labeled as the scapegoat for everything. Everything was my fault. In fact, there's one incident I recall where my mother actually said to me once that I was the cause of all of the problems in the house. I was a teenager at the time. And my mother specifically said to me, it's not me, it's not your father, it's not your brother, it's you. So, and I love my mom, God rest her soul. And in all the education and learning, throughout my life of, through therapy, I realized that, my mom had some emotional issues, and now, I have a lot more compassion for what she experienced. And, I kind of have a better reasoning for why she treated me the way that she did. So, needless to say, as a teenager, I was kind of rebellious, and I ended up getting involved in a very bad relationship when I was 16. I ran away from home. I got involved with this man who was 20 at the time. He was 4 years older than me. And I moved in with him, ran away from home, and he ended up being very physically abusive towards me. Which prior to that, I was always, if any man ever laid a hand on me, I'm out of here. I would never tolerate that. But then I found myself in that situation. And it's actually only been just since, I'm going to say, 2015 when I actually learned about the term trauma bond and what that entails. Because the last relationship that I was in with my youngest daughter's father, I am not qualified to diagnose anyone of anything, but I can identify patterns of behavior. So that's kind of what I base things on. And in my opinion, he is a narcissist. Um, so I was in this relationship. I was always confused. And one of the telltale signs that you are in an abusive or, possibly with a narcissistic person is that you basically live in a state of confusion. You're always confused. You're always, trying to figure out, what am I doing wrong? What can I do to fix this? You're walking on eggshells all the time. You are normally in the beginning of an abusive relationship, the person will use a tactic called love bombing. And this is usually in the first 2 to 3 months where, they will just put you on a pedestal and they will adore you and you will be the best thing that ever happened to them. And you'll feel like, oh my gosh, this person loves me so much. And so that's usually within the first 2 to 3 months. And then after that, there sets in a devaluation period where all of a sudden you go from being up here to, being the dirt on the bottom of their shoe, and, you can't understand. And normally very empathetic people who have codependency issues will get sucked into these type of relationships. Usually the person, like myself at the time, did not have strong boundaries at all, allows people to walk all over them. So that's kind of like a recipe for getting involved in this type of relationship. So needless to say, I was in this state with my youngest daughter's father, and I came across a YouTube video one day that said how to identify and break trauma bonds. And what's this, So, because I'm sure I was looking up therapy for our relationship and trying to fix things. So I watched this video and it just blew my mind. It was like the missing piece to the puzzle. And when I'm watching this video, she's describing every single thing that I'm going through. And it just, there's one psychologist I watched named Dr. Ramani, and she calls it the narcissistic haze or fog that we kind of get in because we're just engulfed in their world. And because we're, empathetic and compassionate and we want to fix things, we want to make things better, we think that we can, improve the situation. We think we can help them and cure them with love. So, but so that was kind of a very pivotal point for me. So I would say I've been studying and educating myself about, trauma, narcissistic abuse, and, everything that it entails since about 2015. So, so that is part of my coaching, because I found that for myself, in the idea that, okay, you have a coaching client and what would you love? And we're going to improve your life. But when you do have these deep trauma wounds, sometimes it actually is a little more challenging. And things that kind of need to be faced and dealt with, along that path so we can, live our most successful life. So, and another thing that I want to get into as well is the trauma bond actually causes chemical changes in our brain to the point where the cycle becomes like an addiction. So if anyone has ever heard of Stockholm syndrome, many times it is compared to Stockholm syndrome, but people look at that as, okay, well, that's an incident, people being held hostage, and but I would say it's a more drawn out process than maybe an isolated incident of people being held hostage in a bank, because it's something that's conditioned over time. And what happens is within our brain, when we're in what they call the honeymoon phase of the abusive cycle, our brain produces oxytocin and the feel good chemicals, and oh, this is great, we're in love and everything's great. And then when the abuse and the devaluation period sets in, and we're, oh my gosh, how did this happen? How can I fix this? So there literally is an addictive pattern within the brain that causes the person to stay in the relationship. And many people from the outside looking in will say, oh, well, what's wrong with them? They should just leave. Why would you stay in that relationship? And these chemical changes in the brain do cause logic and reasoning to be affected. Typical logic and reasoning that we would normally have are affected by these chemicals in the brain. So I'm gonna take a moment and see if anybody has any questions or anything they want to add.
I just want to say that I think probably many of us, if not all, have had a relationship, whether it's with your spouse or someone in your family, your parents, your child, your somebody, or even your friends, may have had some type of abusive, situation, relationship, where even people that could be people in the church, even when you think that somebody is expecting something from you, to a point where it's not necessarily physical abuse, but it's like almost their expectation, like parents expecting you to be somebody else that you're not.
Mm-hmm.
And in my case, I was married to a narcissist. My ex, oh, he's gone now. But anyway, he was a narcissist where he wasn't physically abusive, but he was a passive aggressive key. Like you almost like you're angry. I was angry all the time. I was angry all the time in that relationship, but he also always make you feel like you're less than, you're less than. To a point, finally, I stayed in the relationship because the kids were young until they were older, and finally I said, you know what, I can't do this anymore. And I had to devise a way how I could get out of this, but it was like pretty traumatic in that sense, because I didn't want it to go because the kids were young for the sake of the kid kind of thing. But after a while, the children know that you were going through this, and it's not healthy to keep in this type of relationship, but with this trauma thing where you have this sympathy and then I'm sorry kind of thing, and then you go through the cycle again, and you just can't. You just stay and in some cases with parents, you can't go away. Or so, and then my sister was abused, her husband, to a point where he would lock her inside the house where she can't go outside unless he was with her. So so this is really, even though it's a dark topic, it is a topic that needs to be addressed, because I think abuse is not necessarily from a spouse. It could be from other people within your circle. So anyway, I see Suzanne and Val have your hands up. We'll start. I think Suzanne has your hands first. Go ahead, Suzanne.
Okay, Val, Amy, you and I could spend an hour, if not more, talking about this whole subject. Yeah, I'm writing notes as you go along so that people know. Yeah, I first discovered it in my spouse. He was an overt, for sure, grandiose, for sure. Started out with the Prince Charming effect. He also was 4 years older than I was, but I didn't meet him until I was 18 and 20. But I don't want to go into all of that. I did end up divorcing him. I held in until my daughters were old enough to understand what was going on. And that was when my daughters were senior and sophomore in high school. And then I said, cannot do this. Came down here to Texas thinking I was getting away from him, only to find out that the reason I married him is because my mother is narcissistic. And that's the cycle. You get so accustomed to a certain way of life, especially if you're naive, as I was. Get so accustomed to being the good girl, to fixing everything, to making sure that you weren't jeopardizing the whole relationship. It was never your fault to begin with. And I mean, mine started because I was 17 days late. I was born 17 days late. What child can control when they're born? But that was the catalyst that started everything. I was born late. Oh, your brothers were born on time. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I was aiming for a burning desire day, okay? 212, burning desire day. I did on purpose. I liken it to Toy Story where Buzz says, I'm not aiming for the truck. I'm aiming for this. I was born on burning desire day, which is why I've gotten so much done that I wouldn't have normally gotten done because I'm born on 212. Anyway, my heartache right now is because I divorced, did not get alimony, came into a situation where I'll handle it myself. My mommy says, I'll help you. I'll help you. Guess what? The money is a bond. It's a controlling bond that keeps you stuck. And right now, I have gone just a week now. My mom won't do anything with me, doesn't go anywhere, says it's the crowds of COVID that make her nervous. Jumped on an airplane with my younger brother on Saturday, went to South Carolina, but won't do anything in town with me. Has to run home for the maintenance man because he might be coming. So now I'm in a no contact, and my older brothers, just like you said, Amy, they are oblivious to it. You're being petty. Just go talk to mom. Just go talk to her. She needs more support. No contact means no contact. If I lose my money again, I lose it. But what am I going to do? And as I say, I could take up an hour of your time, and everybody else deserves to talk. So
We have, thank you, Suzanne, for that. We have several coaches here. So when we're done going through this, I'd like to hear some of the responses from everyone here. But I know, Amy, you were going to respond, and then Val. Go ahead, Amy.
Oh, thank you so much, Suzanne, for being vulnerable and sharing that. I can relate so much to that because typically the dynamic with siblings, with narcissistic parents, is that, you know, one child is labeled as the scapegoat and the other child is labeled as the golden child. And there's always, you know, this conflict, and it never ends. So I feel for you in the, you know, no contact situation. It's very, very difficult, especially when it's a member of our family, because it's our family and we want to have those relationships. We don't want to, you know, cut those relationships out of our lives. But unfortunately, you know, it does have to come down to our own mental health and our own well-being, you know, emotionally. And, you know, in my opinion, emotional, physical abuse, I've been through both. You know, I don't consider one any better or worse than the other. They're all very, very damaging, you know.
Physical
So
is actually better from the sake, and I hate to say it this way, but physical is better from the sake that people ask questions. They can't see emotional abuse. They think, oh, you're being petty.
true,
So
true.
if you, I mean, I don't want a woman to feel for her life for being physically abused, but in a sense, it's safer for her because now other people are wondering what's going on. So long as she's strong enough to not say, oh, I ran into the wall, I tripped over something. That's another issue that comes up where he tells her, you must lie, or she tells you, you must lie. You cannot tell me. So anyway, yeah.
Yeah, no, I had a situation like that where I had a black eye and I was told I had to say that a can fell out of the cabinet and hit me when I was, you know, can of tuna fish.
Oh,
So
yeah. So he told you what to say. Yeah. They
yeah,
script you.
Thank you.
exactly. So I'm sorry, but thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Well,
you.
I'm here for your support. So if you need any extra information, I've done it. That was in my book too, the underlying topic in my 5 simple rules, helping other women avoid that kind of person. So yeah, go ahead and answer the rest and we'll go from there.
Okay, thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you,
Val was
Suzanne.
next,
Yeah.
I think.
Well, thank you, Amy, for having this topic. And first, I want to say a statement that I'm really grateful to have my family, my mom and my sister, with whom we had, obviously, me and my sister had terrible trauma, but even not so long ago, like last year, everything got laid out on the table because everything came up to the surface. And so it was quite an interesting moment to live for me because I think I've grown up a lot this past year as far as I mean, I've always seen me as a person who's confident and all that, but what happens in my life demonstrate almost the opposite, like being a victim of assault. And so, and although, you know, it was a person who was telling me, I adore you. So when you said, Amy, you know, they put you on a pedestal, like the best thing happening in their life. And that's exactly what happened. Now I see even better today with this comment. I've learned today with you, Amy, thank you. Or coming to the realization, you know, and because with all this narcissism going on that is coming up to the surface now, we don't want to, or people like me who can have a lot of compassion said, well, I don't want to label him a narcissist because, you know, I'm making the judgment. I don't want to judge, and all that kind of like guilt, you know, that goes on. So I did a lot of process of forgiveness, you know, forgiveness for me for being the person that found herself in that type of situation, and also forgiving him because seriously, like Jesus says, you know, forgiving because they don't know what they're doing. They are simply absolutely no clue of what they're doing, you know, hurting humanity in the first place. You know, we don't hurt other people physically on the top of it. You know, we have no right whatsoever to do so. So now I've realized that I've been in abusive, and even when it went back to a relationship with my sister where I had the mental abuse. If I was not doing whatever she wanted to, you know, because we were between sisters, sometimes, you know, I'm a pretty open person, obviously. I can share some things. And so we had secrets, you know, and my heart at one point was going, or, you know, for this little boy, you know, because we were, you know, playing games or doing things like even studying together. I mean, our brains was resonating the same way. And then she started, you know, the thing saying, well, you got feelings for him. And if you don't do that for me, then I'm going to tell everyone at school that, you know. And so I lived basically in the territory of somebody controlling even the way I feel with someone, even if it was just, I mean, I felt, we don't know what love is. I mean, at that time, or at least, the relationship love that we can have with someone. We're kids, but we have feelings that resonate. Oh, I feel comfortable with you. And the most of it was, I'm holding my yogurt still because I'm having breakfast. The most incredible thing is like, we were so, it was like a brother sister, but also at school. I'm very much also, I was a scholar, definitely, like always aiming for the top, doing the exam. And that required a lot of work, even from myself. But to come back to the topic, this past year, I wanted to understand better the narcissism in this world. And I got another resource that maybe Amy, because you've been in the field for a while, is Rebecca Zung. She has a certain she's an attorney. And
Oh, yes. I've
and
seen
so
her. I
she
love
has
her.
quite a, she has this attorney type of behavior to help you overcome, the relationship. And but I listened also to Dr. Ramani at that time, and some other things also, because the person who I was living with in this abusive relationship came up to the realization, oh my God, I have actually, what was called this disorder? Borderline personality disorder. And borderline is like the mix of bipolar narcissistic. They don't know how to call it, so they put borderline. They're on the edge. So yes, one day you're put on a pedestal. The hour after, you can be crying. I was crying, going in my garden, trying to get out, get some fresh air. And of course, I was yelled out to escaping and all the yelling and it's your fault. And so Rebecca Zoom, got me out. I just wanted to throw that little resources if you think it is appropriate, Amy.
Yes, absolutely. I actually discovered her just recently, I think within the past 6 months or so. And I'm like, oh, wow, check her out. She's an attorney, she's really gonna lay it out there, So thank you so much for sharing that, Val. And again, thank you for being vulnerable, because this is a difficult subject. And even sometimes, doing this type of work, it's very rewarding for me, yet heartbreaking at the same time sometimes, because, like if I have a client and I know they're experiencing some type of physical abuse, sometimes my instinct is just, go grab them out of there, but I can't do that, because you can't force anyone to see anything. People have to see things in their own time and come to their own conclusions and their own realizations. So, we just kind of try to plant the seeds and light the path and, show people there is another way. You don't have to stay in this. And I think that, one of the main things I want to get across to everyone today is that, if you yourself or a friend or a loved one or somebody that is experiencing something like this, I would just say go gentle on yourself, be supportive, be understanding, be that support that they don't have. And it's very hard, but, try not to be judgmental because of the whole thing with the trauma bonding and the, cognitive dissonance. The definition of cognitive dissonance is when we're trying to hold two opposing beliefs in our mind at the same time. So on the one hand, they're thinking, oh, my partner says they love me and, we have some really good times and they seem really sincere. And, when things are good, they're really good. But then on the other hand, my partner is abusing me or talking down to me or, controlling me or, not letting me, live my life and be me and do what I want to do. So, that struggle within a person's mind causes, on top of the confusion they're already experiencing, causes even more confusion. and then they blame themselves and, oh, it's my fault this relationship isn't working. So, and then the narcissist or toxic person has such an amazing way of putting the responsibility for their emotions onto us, that we feel so guilty. How could I leave this person? They'll you're the only one that understands me. You're the only one that can help me, and that was something that I had to get over for myself, was something that they call the savior complex, which, I never really considered myself a savior. My idea is that there's only one position for a savior, and it's taken, and that is Jesus. but that is something that I had to identify in myself to overcome this, is my want to help and feel like, oh yes, I did help save this person, from all these terrible things. But the main thing is that none of us are responsible for anyone else's thoughts, feelings, or actions. That's on them, and our thoughts and feelings and actions are on us. so so thank you again. And
yeah, I got crocodile tears from him, and I got, oh, my life is terrible for my mom. And I said, I know your husband's in a home with Alzheimer's. I understand. That doesn't mean you get to be rude.
Exactly. I see Jody.
Before Jody start, just want to say, Val Laughlin is asking for the name of the author of that book. Please, go ahead, Jody.
I want to add both a little bit of more lightness and gravity to this whole thing. It's fascinating for me to reflect on a question that pretty much can change your life if you're willing to actually ask it, is how is this happening for me? How is this happening for me? Because if I believe that I am the source of my entire experience and I am the sovereign of this hologram, then I understand also that I'm creating every one of these experiences. And I personally believe that my soul encoded me both with my light and my shadow. And the shadows are there as obstacles for me to actually overcome. And so that's why we keep going into these same kinds of relationship dynamics over and over and over again, because it's like putting the mirror up in front of ourselves. And when is there a point when I decide, like, okay, I don't need to have a mirror for the rest of my life. I don't need to have like this introspection. Like I learned this lesson, I'm done with it. And instead of like, going into the, oh, poor me thing, because that really is what happens with a lot of people. It's like they make themselves into victims. So instead of going into the old poor me, it's like, oh, okay, I can see clearly this is the reflection now. And I'm just going to choose that from now on, I'm going to make different decisions about this.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for that, that take on it, because it is a very dark kind of subject. And I was even apprehensive to even bring it up. But from, my experience, it's almost like a silent pandemic. It really is. There's just a lot of people out there suffering that don't even realize. And that was something that I had to face within myself. Actually, it actually was the last time that I got back together with my youngest daughter's father, because he told me he was dying of cancer, and that was about 7 years ago. He's still around, but anyway, but God bless him. But I had this, upon learning about it, and even being, kind of like silly enough to send him videos like, yeah, I don't understand what is a narcissist. That's literally what he said. But on some level within me, I knew I had to identify my own toxicity and what was it within me that was attracting me to this. So that was very expansive, and still is now expansive, because I can't say that other men I've met since then don't have narcissistic tendencies, but I'm way more aware of it now. And, you know, things to look out for. I don't know if anybody's in the dating world, but, you know, there's certain things you can kind of pick up right off the bat. You know, are they trying to control you? Are they, you know, I noticed a lot of people that are very toxic will be very aggressive if, you know, you're conversating about something in your life and, well, you should do this and you should do that. And, you know, and I feel like, you know, the company I keep now has just kind of gotten me to a place of, you know, moving away from those type of toxic people in my life, in a sense, you know. So, but we always have to be aware. I feel there are energy vampires out there that, you know, we have to kind of shield ourselves from and be aware. So, so thank you so much for sharing, Jody. I appreciate it.
I just have one last comment about that. If I know that Arlene wanted to say something. I would just encourage people to focus on language, because semantics can be really powerful. And I've noticed in the language that you're using, Amy, there's a lot of victim consciousness, like using the word vampire and, you know, a lot of these, the way of, you know, and even as a healer and as someone who's bringing this into the world, the more that you hold the people that you're working with, like in this place of victimhood, like, oh, poor them, like this is awful, like they're being abused, you are taking away their sovereignty. And that's actually repeating the same pattern of codependence that people have through this trauma bonding. It's like, oh, I need to save these people. It's back into the savior complex of I need to save these people. And I am going to put myself back into this role because I believe that I'm a victim. And so I'm holding them as victims also, instead of looking at this, how did I create this? How are they creating this? Are they willing now to break this pattern, or are they not? And if they're not, okay, let them keep looping until they can actually see what the mirror is showing them.
Wow, that's just so awesome that you just said that, because I was literally thinking that earlier about with coaching, that like I don't want to be in like codependent, you know, things with people, and I need to like, you know, keep myself in check, and am I really like beyond this? So thank you. That's great. I definitely, I'm aware, you know, I'm still working through it. I'm still, you know, seeing therapists and other coaches, and you know, we're a work in progress, right? But thank you, I really appreciate that.
Thank you for that. Before Arlene, before turn it to Arlene, I just want to make a comment. That is awesome, Jody. I mean, that reminds me of this idea of having a boundary, you know, how far, or when somebody, if you already seen the sign when you meet a man or whatever, friend, even friends or whoever, that like, how far do you let them, you know, where you feel like you're less than, and if they use language that make you feel like you're inferior, that's kind of like a sign of like, okay, I'm out here, you know, kind of not to allow that. Jody, that's so amazing, because I think we allow it. We are kind of like an enabler. We're talking about mirror, and you're repeating yourself. You keep finding that those kind of people are attracting, you're attracted to those kind of people, because that is, I don't know what it is, but thank you for that. So Arlene, go ahead.
I almost feel like I don't need to say anything because you just punctuated what I was going to say. I was in line with, struck by what Jody said. And I guess I wanted to share that I also had my first marriage was that kind of situation. And I wanted to say that through my own journey, for those of you that don't know, I've written a book called Overcoming Fear and Getting Unstuck. And I write a lot about that situation with my ex-husband, highlighting the fact that we do bring circumstances and situations to us based on some of the things and that we need to overcome and understandings that we need to overcome. Without growth, or without challenge, I should say, there is no growth. And so sometimes we have these challenges so that we can see things differently and begin to grow. So for example, with me, And I think this is something that I have found in many of the people who have been in my situation. So I'll just talk about my situation. And if it is relevant to you, great. If not, you know, well, even better. It was that the people who seem to be in those situations like myself that I have come in contact with tend to be very kind, loving people. And if we err on the side of being kind and loving and generous and giving. And some of us in our journey are experiencing these things so that we literally, you know, hit on people who force us to move a little bit more to that other side of the spectrum. Not necessarily to move all the way across, but at least move to a place where we have better balance. So people who I have come in contact with on the journey, both in my coaching and in my life, who are on the other end of the spectrum, who are very aggressive, who are very quick to respond, tend to not be in these types of situations because when they see it initially, their reaction is different. So our reaction, and I'm speaking about me and the people that I know, not accusatory of anybody else on the call, has been to be receptive and understanding and try to facilitate the other person and understand where they're coming from, not realizing that we don't need to understand everybody. Some people we need to participate with and receive and support. And there are some people that we need not to participate with and need not support. And we don't need therapy. Okay, we don't need hours and hours of counseling, but what we need is to accept the fact that this is a growth area for us and we need to leave these people out of our circle. What is it called? The circle of love. There's a movie that came out and they call it the circle of love. Some people are saying that, right? And so it's a learning experience for us. And when we begin to look at it as such and shift our mindset, then we can take out some of the words that Jody was sharing that we could take out, which is this victim thing. Because as long as we look at it like that, like, wow, this person did something to me, as opposed to, I allowed this experience to happen so that I could grow in an area in which I need growth. Okay, because life is a journey and we're constantly growing. So the people who experience this thing is because we're growing in this area. Like myself, I have grown in this area where some of my other friends, they needed to be a little bit more soft and genteel and accommodating of people. And so the experiences that they experienced were alternate to that. And that's why coaching was so beautiful for me and why I do it now, because therapy is long. You know, you talk about your childhood and you share about the past and dig it up. Whereas coaching is, look at the situation. How do I move forward based on where I am now? A different thought process. Okay, this is happening for me so that I can move forward in this area. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Rini.
Thank you so much. That is so amazing and empowering. And yes, I mean, I'm absolutely 100%, you know, wanting to move away from victimhood or victim mindset into the victor mindset. So that's the ultimate goal. But like you said, I mean, yeah, these experiences are definitely for our growth. I mean, I try to live my life every day under the thought that everything in my experience is for my betterment and, you know, my ultimate greater good, even though it might not be fun to go through sometimes. You know, everything is to improve us and make us better. So thank you so much, Arlene. That was very powerful. Great words for me to mull over through my head, and you too, Jody. Thank you. I don't know if anybody else.
Go
Oh,
ahead, Suzanne,
Jane.
Suzanne, and
Yeah.
then Jane.
Yeah, I was
Okay.
just gonna say, for me, the aha that, oh, okay, this is where the pattern is. I was, because my mom was like this is why I married my husband. I do think it is harder to, I think it's not easy. I don't even mean easy, but it is a greater possibility to leave a spouse than it is to leave a parent. from the standpoint that a spouse, yeah, you may still have children, but you can really eliminate the amount of time that you spend with interacting with them. I think a parent is harder. The thing I congratulate myself on is that once I really looked at her, yeah, I grew. I'm like, first of all, I grew when I raised my own daughters because I said, I'm going to break this chain. I know she's a product of narcissism. So as Bob Proctor says, it just keeps coming down. So I was the one who made the change to my own daughters and said, I'm not going to raise them by default. I'm raising by design. And my older daughter said, Mom, you were an awesome mom. Like, thank you. Thank you. That really makes me feel good. That's exactly what I need to hear. And she's the harder of the two, meaning she is the more has more of the straightforwardness than my younger daughter. My younger daughter and I always were on the same path. My older daughter was like, "Thank you, Alexis. I needed to hear that." But leaving a mother is, especially if she does help you financially, is probably so much harder. Plus the fact that, Amy, if you're the scapegoat, nobody else believes the reason why you would leave her. And they're like, she's 80. Just go and be with her. Go take care of her. And it's like, this is a conflict of interest here that you're not seeing or believing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I definitely understand. And I'm kind of in the same situation with my dad. And I think the thing that's helped me the most is just having my own strong boundaries and not letting his stuff be my stuff. Because I mean, I used to be, if I heard somebody yelling and cursing in the other room, right away, oh my gosh, what's wrong? I have to go see, I have to go fix, I have to go make it better. And I don't do that anymore. Like, oh, that's your stuff. Keep it over there.
I'm
And
moving back to Rhode Island because I can't. Otherwise, I'm too close, and my brothers automatically think, "Well, just go take care of her. Just go take care of her."
yeah, you'll work it out. It's all part of the journey. And I know Jane has her hand up too. And I just wanted to bring up the collective consciousness and generational curse breakers. I bet Jane might have something to say about all that.
Oh, geez. Hi, everyone. Yeah, this is a great sharing. And I'm kind of reminded of a book that came across my path probably 25 years ago, maybe more, especially for and not even just the borderline personality disorder person. It was this book called I Hate You, Please Don't Leave Me. And when I picked up that book and started reading it, of course, the title is kind of jolting because you can't imagine that there is someone or many someones in the world that hold space for that. And I did meet someone, someone that I dated some years ago, that it's like, okay, his picture should be on that cover. Luckily, I only spent a couple of months and then was like, something's wrong here. I really don't want to stay around to get to the bottom of this, because I think it might be a black hole.
Oh yeah.
Right? But yeah, and I have to say, I think that book is, I think, forever valuable, no matter what. But knowing that, especially, we do live in our little cocoons, and or even if we're in certain situations growing up, we can't give words to what that experience or experiences might be. And we wonder if it's normal. What do you call normal, right? But yeah, so this is a terrific platform for that. And yes, it's not lighthearted and make you want to do somersaults, but it does, you check in on yourself. It's like, sort of like, thank you for the checkup, and thank you for that I don't have to have a copay,
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Jane. And I've come to learn also through like childhood emotional trauma and people that are susceptible, to getting into these type of relationships, and kind of like, I kind of feel like I was born into a trauma bond, but I've come across different literature or studies or books saying that, when you're exposed to this childhood trauma and living, born and growing up in these dysfunctional families, it's basically like your red flag detector is malfunctioning. Like you feel like, oh, these things are normal, and one of my favorite quotes from I guess a fictional therapist was literally the therapist from The Sopranos. I forgot her name right now, but I specifically remember this episode of her saying, we tend to repeat patterns, even if they're unhealthy for us, just because they're familiar and they're comfortable. So, that's my goal is, for myself and whoever I'm working with, is identifying these unhealthy, toxic patterns, because you got to identify them first before you can, do anything about them. So that's kind of my main focus, and forgiving yourself, and oh, how did I get myself into this? Well, you got into it for a reason. You're here to grow from it. So don't beat yourself up about it. You know where you are now, like Arlene said, how we want to move forward. So
And I think part of when you're making that change, when you're really shifting and making conscious choices, I think one of the things that I keep in mind, a saying, because sayings are really good, like you were just talking about the Sopranos therapist, and it's this: being comfortable with being uncomfortable, because you're going to be uncomfortable in your trek towards a changed life, towards that growth. It's not going to be, oh, I'm set free and I'm picking daisies now. No.
absolutely.
And it's really okay to be uncomfortable. But it's like the best form of being uncomfortable.
We are.
The butterfly has a struggle to get out of the cocoon in order to live.
Yes, thank you so much, Jane. And the idea of this codependency or needing somebody and not being sufficient on your own. But we're running out of time. We only have 2 more minutes. Is Arlene still there? She had her hands up. I don't see her here. So Yanni or Loveline, we haven't heard from you. Do you have anything you want to say, or Loveline, go ahead.
Actually, what I wanted to share is that one thing that I've noticed is that narcissists don't know that they are narcissistic. And most of the time, it has something to do with their upbringing, the emotional trauma that they went through when they were growing up, and that was not dealt with. So they grow with it. And then when you marry them, like Amy said, the first few months is heaven on earth, and then that monster of narcissism then shows up, and you just have to look for how to, the moment you know that that is what they are suffering from, or it is emotional trauma that they've suffered from in the past, then it becomes much easier for you to cope with it, or maybe to rescue yourself from it and see how you can protect yourself from their behavior, from their narcissistic behavior.
Yes, thank you so much for that. That's very true. And it's very unfortunate. I mean, I've actually recently gotten to a place of saying, oh, I got to have some compassion for the narcissist, in the sense that most of them really are just unaware. They lack that self-awareness, and joining us today. And, you know, I thank you again, Rini, for providing this platform. And I hope that, you know, I left everybody with a feeling of increase and expansion, and hopefully you learned something new that you didn't know. And I'm also going to share my YouTube channel that I started recently that's dealing with, you know, toxic relationships. And I'm going to put that in the chat later. So thank you so much,
Thank you so
everyone.
much.
And
Thank you so much, Amy, and everyone here. I think this is a good topic. You know, Amy said, really, is this going to be too dark, too heavy? I said, no, you'd be surprised how many people actually have this experience in their lives. It's not just spouse or anybody. I think this is a great topic that I think someday in the future, we may repeat again, because as you can see, we run out of time, and this conversation could go on. But thank you again, everyone. We ran out of time, Amy and everyone, and we'll see you next week. So have a great weekend. Is there any last minute thing anyone want to say before I close? Otherwise, thank you again, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Thank you,
and
Amy.
next week.
Thank you, Rainey.
Okay.
Thank you.
thank you
Yes.
so much, everybody. Have a great day.
Okay. Bye-bye.